Good morning, everyone. I am Teacher Jarrett. And today we are going to be reading a story about time. Okay? So the question we've been talking about this week is, how do we measure time? So today we are going to read about how Nate the snake keeps track of time. Okay? So let's read all of this together first, and then we will go on to the next page and keep reading. Genre, fantasy. Essential question. How do we measure time? Read about how Nate the snake keeps track of time. Okay, so let's start by looking at this clock. This is an alarm clock, right? And it shows the time. So who can tell me what time this clock says? If you know, raise your hand. Oh, okay, you can tell me. I'm listening. Yes, it is 8 o'clock. We can see the small hand is on the 8, and the big hand is on the 12, right? So that means it's 8 o'clock. So let's go to the next page and see what the picture shows. Oh, we can see that this is the bed, right? And so Nate, the snake, is sleeping in his bed, and it's 8 o'clock, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's read this title together, okay? The title is Nate the Snake is Late. All right, let's read. Nate the Snake is late. Okay, so let's go to the next page and start reading about Nate the Snake. It's 8 o'clock and I cannot be late. I do not wish to make my pals wait. So we can see that the alarm clock, when it reached 8 o'clock, started ringing. Right? And so Nate heard that and woke up. And he saw that it's 8 o'clock. And he said he cannot be late. Right? Being late is not good. It's important to be on time. So if you say you're going to be somewhere at 10 o'clock, you should be at that place at 10 o'clock. If you get there at 10:30, that's not good. Okay? So let's read this together. It is 8 o'clock, and I cannot be late. I do not wish to make my pals wait. Okay, so let's go to the next page. I must be there at 10:30, but I have lots of time until then. So 10:30 is another way to say 10:30. Okay, so at 10:30, the little hand will be on the 10, and the big hand will be on the 6, right? So who can tell me what time it is in this picture? Remember, this is the little hand, so it's on the 8. So it's 8. If you know, raise your hand. Okay, I want you to tell me. Yes, it is 8:15. Good job. So at 8 o'clock, Nate the snake woke up, right? And at 8:15, Nate the snake is taking a bath, right? See, he has his little rubber ducky. So let's read this together now. I must be there at 10:30, but I have lots of time until then. So if we look at this clock, how much time does Nate the snake have to get to his friends at 10:30? So we have 8:15 to 9:15, right? And then 9:15 to 10:15, right? And then another 15 minutes. So he has 2 hours and 15 minutes to get to his friends. Okay, let's go to the next page. At last I am set and on my way there, but I think I still have some time to spare, right? So we talked about the word way. Way means that you are going, you are on the path or on the direction to go somewhere. So if he says he's on his way there, that means if he's here and his friends are there, he is somewhere in between, okay? So if he's here and his friends are here, and he says he is on his way, that means he is somewhere in between his friends, okay, and his house. So let's read this together. At last I am set and on my way there, but I think I still have some time to spare. And we said some because we talked about some yesterday, right? Some means a few. So if he says he has some time, that means he thinks he has a couple hours to get to his friends, right? So if we look at the clock, it says 8:30, right? Yeah. So that means Nate the snake has 2 hours to get to his friends, right? Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next page. I wade in the lake as frogs hop away. I do not think they wish to play. So away means to go in the direction that's not towards you, right? So this means the frogs come towards me. Or you can say the frogs go away from me, right? So away means in that direction. In that direction. Okay? So we can see here in the picture that Nate the snake is in the water, in the lake, and the frogs, if this is Nate, the frogs are going away from him, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's read this together now. I wade in this lake as frogs hop away. I do not think they wish to play. Okay, now let's look at the clock. What time is it? Okay, if you know what time it is, raise your hand. Oh, I want you to give me an answer. I'm listening. Remember, this is the shorthand. So it's 9 o'clock, right? Did you say that? Yeah, you said that. It's 9 o'clock. So now Nate has 1.5 hours to get back to see his friends, right? Okay. The sun is hot, and I nap on a rock. Then I wake up and gaze at the clock. All right, so now it's 9:30, right? Yeah. So now Nate has 1 more hour before he needs to get to see his friends. So let's read this together. The sun is hot, and I nap on a rock. Then I wake up and gaze at the clock. Okay. When Nate the snake woke up, it's 10 o'clock. Oh no, drats! It is 10 o'clock. Can it be? Will my pal still be there for me? All right. So when Nate the snake took a nap, it was 9:30, right? And then when he woke up, it was 10 o'clock. That means he only has half an hour to get to see his friends. All right, let's read this together. Drats! It is 10 o'clock. Can it be? Will my pals still be there for me? So now Nate has to run to get to see his friends. I dash up a lane and past the gate. I am on my way, but am I late? So now Nate is running to get to his friends, right? So Nate is outside of the building and it's 10:30. So he was supposed to be with his friends at 10:30, right? So maybe he will be late. Let's read this together and then we'll see the next page. I dash up the lane and past the gate. I am on my way, but am I late? All right. So dash means to go fast, right? So let's all dash a little bit. Ready? Dashing is like run, 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 run. Can you do that? Ready? Dash. Run, 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 run. Yeah? Did you do it? I saw you dashing. Okay, let's go to the next page. My 6 best pals sit with Miss Tate. I tell them all why I am late. They grin at me and then they say, now we can hear the story today. Okay, so it says story hour is at 10:30. So that's why he had to meet his friends at 10:30, right? But let's look at this clock. What time is it? So it's, who knows the time? If you know the time, raise your hand. Okay, I want you to tell me the answer. I'm listening. 10:45. Yes, it is 10:45. Okay. So that means that Nate the snake is 15 minutes late, right? Yeah. So let's read this together now, and then we'll talk a little more about it. My 6 best pals sit with Miss Tate. I tell them all why I am late. They grin at me, and then they say, now we can hear the story today. Okay. So remember, the word why can be used to ask a question, or it can be a way to explain something, right? So Nate can say, I slept on a rock until 10 o'clock, and that is why I am late, right? So that's a way to use the word why. And then the word now means at this very moment. So for this story, when they say now we can hear the story today, it means that at 10:45, now they can hear the story. And remember, today means the day that we are living right now, okay? So the day we lived yesterday, or the day that we lived the day before is yesterday. The day we haven't lived yet in the future is tomorrow, okay? But today is the day we are living right now, all right? So now we can see that the Miss Tate and his friends waited for him to hear the story, right? Oh, they're such good friends. They waited for him, even though he was late. All right, so now let's go to the next page. That was the end of the story. So Nate the snake arrived with his friends to see his friends, and he was a little late, but his friends said it was okay, right? Because they smiled, they grinned at him. So that's a nice story, right? Yeah. All right, let's go to the next page. Now we are going to talk about comprehension. Character, setting, and plot. A character is a person or an animal in a story. The setting is where and when a story takes place. The plot of a story is what happens at the beginning, middle, and end. Okay? So let's read this together. Comprehension. Character, setting, plot. A character is a person or an animal in a story. The setting is where and when a story takes place. The plot of a story is what happens at the beginning, middle, and end. Okay. So remember when we used to do our character setting events chart? Yeah. So the character is the person or the animal. The setting is where and when the story takes place. And the plot is what happens. Okay? So find text evidence. Find out what happens at the beginning of the story. So this is from page 16, which was the beginning of the story. Okay? So let's read it. I will read it first, and then you can read it. Okay? It is 8 o'clock, and I cannot be late. I do not wish to make my pals wait. So at the beginning of the story, we see Nate the snake wake up and say that he cannot be late, right? So let's read this together. Find text evidence. Find out what happens at the beginning of the story. It is 8 o'clock, and I cannot be late. I do not wish to make my pals wait. Okay, so that's what happened at the beginning of the story, right? Yeah. All right. Look, now we are going to retell the story. Yay! Woo! Remember yesterday when we retold the story with our beginning, middle, and end chart? Remember we talked about the boy, and he saw the pig and the other animals on his bus, and that's why he was late to school. You remember? Yeah, you remember. Okay. So now we are going to practice this chart because they already wrote it for us. So now we just have to look at it and understand it, okay? So at the beginning of the story, Nate wakes up at 8 o'clock. He does not want to be late. Okay, so that was the very first thing that happened. The middle of the story is Nate does many things, such as wade in the lake. Then he takes a nap, right? So that happened. So you have the beginning and then the middle. So that's the thing that happened in the middle of the story. And for the end, we saw Nate gets to the library late for story hour, but his friends wait for him, right? So even though Nate was late, his friends were still happy to see him, and they waited for him. All right, so let's read this together. Beginning. Nate wakes up at 8 o'clock. He does not want to be late. Middle. Nate does many things, such as wade in the lake. Then he takes a nap. Good job, yeah. And Nate gets to the library late for story hour, but his friends wait for him. Okay, so that is a simple way we can retell the story, right? So if you saw this chart, you would know almost everything that happened in the story, right? Yeah. So now we need to talk about the plot. And the plot of a story is what happens at the beginning, middle, and end, right? So we already did that with this chart. But let's read this together, okay? Your turn. Talk about the plot of Nate the Snake is Late. Okay, ready? Your turn. Talk about the plot of Nate the Snake is Late. Okay, and we did that already in this chart. So now let's go on to the next page, okay? Yeah. Readers 2. So, writing and grammar. Readers 2. Word choice. Kate wrote a poem. She used sensory details to tell how she looks, feels, and sounds when she's late. Okay, let's read this together. Writing and grammar. Readers 2. Word choice. Kate wrote a poem. She used sensory details to tell how she looks, feels, and sounds when she's late. Okay, so let's read Kate's poem. Okay, here it is, Kate's poem. When I am late, I race, zoom, and dash. I huff and I puff as quick as a flash. So now it says your turn. Tell what sensory details Kate used in her poem. All right, let's read Kate's poem together, and then we will talk about this question. So now it's your turn to read Kate's poem. When I am late, I race, zoom, and dash. I huff and puff, and I puff as quick as a flash. Wow. So when Kate is late, she goes so fast so that she can get to where she needs to be, right? Yeah. And so now let's read this together. Your turn. Tell what sensory details Kate used in her poem. So let's look at the words, the sensory details that Kate used. So sensory details tell how she looks, feels, and sounds. So one sensory detail would be race, right? Because we can see that she looks like she's running so fast, right? Another sensory detail is zoom, right? When we hear the word zoom, we can think about something that's just zoom and going really fast, right? Yeah, so that's another sensory detail. Because if we close our eyes and hear the word zoom, we know that it means something is going very fast. And another sensory detail is dash. Because when we hear dash, we also think about someone going very, very fast, right? Yeah. So now, who can tell me the sensory details in this sentence? If you have any ideas, raise your hand. Oh, I want you to tell me. Tell me the two sensory details. I'm listening. And yeah, very good. So we can feel or we can hear the sound of Kate making the huff and puff noises, right? So huff and puff means that Kate is running really fast, right? She right? So Kate is making those sounds while she's running, okay? So that's another 2 sensory details. And the last sensory detail is quick as a flash, right? So if you see a flash, it just goes for 1 second maybe, right? And then it's gone. So we know a flash is very, very fast. And so when Kate says quick as a flash, we know that she's just going so fast, right? Because a flash is just a second. And if Kate can run as fast as a flash, then she's going very, very fast, right? Does that make sense? I think it does, okay? So let me erase these. If you want to practice, now you can pause, and find the sensory details yourself, okay? Because I erased all of the lines, so now you can try to find them again, okay? Okay, so let's go to the next page. Writers. So now we're going to learn a little bit about writing, okay? Commas. You can use commas to separate 3 verbs. The words race, zoom, and dash are verbs or action words. So we can see this is the sentence that Kate wrote in her poem, right? She said, I race, comma, zoom, comma, and dash, right? So if you have 3 verbs in a row, then you put commas in between, okay? So let's read this together. Writers, commas. You can use commas to separate 3 verbs. The words race, zoom, and dash are verbs or action words. I race, comma, zoom, comma, and dash. Okay, very good. Now your turn. Where did Kate place the commas? Write a poem. Use commas to separate 3 verbs. So let's see where Kate put the commas. When I am late, comma. So she put a comma here, but that isn't used to separate 3 verbs, right? Right. She says, I race, zoom, and dash. So we can see she used 3 action words right here, and she used commas, right? So she put the commas in between the 3 action words. So let's do an example, because this is sometimes hard to understand. So we can say, when I am hungry, I yell, scream, and cry. I ask my mom for food. I ask my mom for food. She gives me rice. Okay, so here's another poem. When I am hungry, I yell, scream, and cry. I ask my mom for food. She gives me rice. Okay? So there's another example of 3 action words or 3 verbs in a row, and then we put a comma after the first 2 words, right? So now you can write a poem, okay? And when you write the poem, when you write the poem, you can write a poem like this, or write a poem like this, and talk about when you're hungry, or when you are late, or when you are tired, or when you are happy, right? Let's do one more. When I am happy, I laugh, smile, and what else? Do you have an idea? If you have an idea, raise your hand. Oh, I want you to tell me. I'm listening. And jump. Okay, you can jump when you're happy. I cheer. I cheer and yell. My friends and I have fun. Right? So that's another example of a poem. So when you are happy, you laugh, comma, smile, comma, and jump, right? So now it's your turn to make a poem. But you can do that after we are done, okay? Today, we already finished our lesson. I know it went so fast today, right? Yeah. But we will be back tomorrow to do more reading, okay? But for now, I have to say bye-bye. Bye-bye. And I will see you next time, okay? So bye-bye. Bye-bye.